Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us here today. What we want to be talking about is how to boost your technicians' productivity and complete more jobs with remote assistance. So data from the US Census Bureau is showing a significant uptake in sales and eating and drinking establishments. And obviously the demand for service technicians is picking back up. So if you're like a lot of food equipment service businesses, your technicians are all out in their trucks, driving from one site to another in a rush now to fix failed equipment. While a lot of customers are calling back for service, the fact remains that we're still in a big shortage of skilled technicians, and we're seeing increased pressure on experienced technicians to support the less experienced ones. So how do we support our technicians to get the jobs done faster and on the first truck roll? I recently published an article in the latest Savisa magazine. In that issue, I'm discussing the latest breakthrough in boosting technicians' productivity. So today, I'm really excited to be talking to Mark from Help Lightning and Dennis from Kitchen Equipment Solutions to explore how we can empower your technicians with the latest technology to help them complete more jobs in less time. So Mark and Dennis, I'm really excited to chat to you both. Welcome and thanks for joining me.
Great. Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So gents, whoever wants to take it off, but tell us a little bit of background, a little bit about your businesses.
Yeah, Mark, why don't you jump in there?
Yeah, so thanks, Scott. So, my background is really in delivering sort of world-class business-to-business software, and that's exactly what we've done at Help Lightning. At Help Lightning, we have a solution that allows an expert to support anyone from really 1,000 miles away or from another continent if necessary. It's a very unique solution that allows not only for the expert to see what they see, but to also be able to put their hands and tools into the field of view of the person they're supporting. And certainly in the food and beverage space, that's just becoming more and more important. The equipment is becoming more complex. So we've really seen the solution add a lot of value in that space.
Yeah, wonderful. And Dennis?
Yeah, Scott, thanks
for your experience.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Mark is definitely the technology guy on this call, but I'm the industry guy, and I've been in the food service equipment industry for about 10 years. Most of that time was with either Welbilt or divisions of Welbilt. I'm a marketing guy by background, but even while I was with Welbilt, I became both frustrated and fascinated by the challenges of supporting the technicians who are out there in the field. And I would say that in our industry, we have even another added wrinkle, which is that the technicians don't work for the factories, and the technicians don't work for the guy who owns the kitchen, and the technicians don't work for the guy who sold the equipment. The technicians are out there in almost this third industry unto itself. So while the factories and the service companies have this symbiotic, mutually dependent relation, we have this challenge, we have this almost crazy traditional assumption that any technician can work on any product on any given day of the week. And what that means is that by definition, they're generalists. I mean, I know Mark works with guys who might go in and work on a piece of medical equipment or a brand of elevator every single day of the year. But our guys, by comparison, they can work on a Frymaster fryer one day and then an Isomatic ice machine the next day. So they're needing this remote support and expertise.
Yeah, interesting insight. And that probably leads me into my very first question I've got down here. For everyone listening out there, in your own words, do you want to explain what is remote assistance? What problems does it really solve for these food equipment service agents? And it's a great intro that you've probably given into that question, Dennis.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what for me it is. It's a way to take the expertise. There's always an expert out there somewhere, but you can't have him on the job. And as I mentioned, these folks are generalists, so they can't have specialized knowledge in everything. So what Help Lightning does is it allows you to project that expertise right into the job site. And Mark, I'll kick it over to you on that point because you bring the more in-depth knowledge of the system. But for me, it's just this little magic that lets you put the factory expert or even a more senior technician who might be on the other side of the county or the other side of the state, and kind of put him there on the job site with you.
Yeah, that's a good description, Dennis. And really, you mentioned a couple of times, supporting a field service engineer. Well, remote assistance can really be used to support your customers as well, which is a huge win for the food equipment service industry. So basically, the gold standard is for you to be with the person that you're supporting, right? And that's typically what the industry has done. So they would take an expert, send that expert out, either in a truck or on an airplane, and that person would be with the person, with the equipment that they're supporting. But in many cases, that's just not possible. Certainly for the last 18 months, it's been impossible. So remote assistance is really the ability to have that expert be virtually with the person they're supporting, virtually own that piece of equipment, which is really a big win. In the last 18 months, we've seen that over and over again.
That's an interesting concept. To drill down into that, Mark, I've often heard different service businesses saying that they don't want an employee or a manager or anyone to touch the equipment. How have you found that in terms of remote first service or remote service to actually interacting with the customer? Because I think that's a fantastic option. If I can go back to the very simplistic IT analogy of have you turned it off and on, which would perhaps save a truck roll. But can you expand a little bit more on that, Mark?
I can. And as Dennis mentioned, Help Lightning is in multiple verticals. So we certainly support food service, and we have some great opportunities there to add value. And that's something we heard, 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe even as 2 or 3 years ago as well. But if your customer has an option to wait until tomorrow or to have an expert support them virtually, and I mean not just be able to see what they're seeing, but to actually put their hands into the field of view to show them and guide them how to solve a problem, typically you can get your customer to agree to that. Now, you as a company, you might feel like there's some risks there, but there are some things that customers can do for a piece of equipment. And many times these customers are not consumers, but they're business customers, which probably have some level of expertise or skill. They might be a store manager or something like that that's going to be able to realize what the safety issues are.
So as long as we're not asking them to cut the red wire, we're fairly safe.
That's exactly right.
It's a really interesting concept. I really enjoy that one. Dennis, have you got anything to add there? Is it something that you've come across? Is it something the industry's asking for? Or is it something the industry's hesitant to adopt?
Yeah, well, I think that in our industry, there is a correct and appropriate concern about safety, but actually this remote support really addresses that, because in a certain way you can tell somebody what to do and you can also tell them what not to do, right? You can say, you want to do this, but if you get to this situation, call a technician. But the other thing that I know Mark and I have talked about is one of the ways that we're packing technology into these commercial kitchen products is in the controllers, these digital programmable touchscreen controllers. And I can't tell you how often we hear about truck rolls when there's really nothing wrong with the equipment, right? There is not an equipment problem. And you don't mean to say it's operator error, like the customer somehow screwed up. But if you can walk a customer through how to reset a system or how to change day parts in a calendar-driven digital programmable menu, or you can tell them how to reset a breaker. That's a great one. I know a story of a McDonald's franchisee who drove across 2 counties because the clamshell grill in his restaurant wasn't working, and it literally was that a breaker was thrown in the kitchen. If he had been able to coach that employee remotely, he not only could have avoided his time, but he wouldn't have had a clamshell grill that was down for an hour and a half.
Yeah, interesting concept. And I want to explore, I guess, how does that benefit me as a service technician? Don't I get paid for going out for that first service? So avoiding this truck roll, I often hear about, well, what happens to our revenue? The customer's quite happy to pay. Traditionally, we've run a truck roll. How have you guys seen that in the industry at the moment? And the flat out comment that I've received from a few people is, well, hang on, I get paid $180, $80 in some cases to actually send a technician out. That's part of our agreement with the client. How do you navigate that pricing, I guess, question or that relationship?
Well, I'll take that one first from our very specific industry perspective, but I think this is really true across all the trades. I know of one large and fantastic service company in their industry that right now has a calculated need for, I think, about 370 technicians, and they're running at about 295. And that is the gap between technicians I need on a weekly basis and technicians that I have. My point being, if I don't have to roll a truck out to this restaurant, we're certainly not going to be short on places to dispatch that technician, right? Yeah. And then the other thing that I would add is, as a marketing guy, you can either invoice your customer for $150, or you can delight your customer and keep them as a customer for 2 decades. And I would pick delighting the customer every time over hitting them with a trip charge and a 90 minimum, and they pay $300 for somebody to show them, that the breaker was tripped. Mark, I'm sure you see that not only in food service, but everywhere.
Yeah, that was actually where I was going to go first, Dennis. I mean, Scott, I think you said I get paid to go out, well, that's certainly that's true, but you get paid because you have customers, right? You get paid because you have happy customers, and you can continue to send people out and charge, and then sooner or later, somebody else will have that customer. And so, and people are seeing that, and certainly you can monetize remote assistance. So we have many of our customers are monetizing the solution. You just have to think through your agreements and your support agreements and how those work. Dennis has a tremendous amount of experience in that world and can help you do that, and we can help. Lightning can certainly do that as well.
No, that's the feeling I get. I want to make sure that it's something that's also resonating through the technology providers like you guys. So my other question here, just to really drill down, is how does it affect first-time fix rates? How do you really see that, the time for resolution, and ultimately what we were just talking about, that customer satisfaction? Have you guys got any sort of tangible stories or numbers there that would demonstrate, wow, like I need to have a serious look at what this technology is?
I'm smiling on that one because it's yet another discussion that gives me the opportunity to say, I love our industry, but boy, we have got to drag it into, the right century. And what I mean by that is there are other industries that are far ahead of us in adopting not only this technology, but other similar technologies. And we don't have, or at least I don't have, access to any database right now. I only have anecdotes. By comparison, Mark, you've been doing this, I don't know how many countries you're in or how many users you have right now, but you have a database where some of us, Mark and I, were trying to take the food service equipment industry and saying, come on, guys, we need to do this. So Mark, why don't you share something there?
Yeah, no, we do have some real data, Scott, around that. And we spend a lot of time and energy trying to understand that better. And, every customer is different. Every industry is different here. But first time fix rate improvements of 20% are pretty reasonable. There's a metric that you didn't ask about that we measure. I talked before about true customer support. So we actually help improve what you might call phone fix rate or dispatch avoidance, right? So we have certainly first time fix rate goes up, but if you don't have to send a truck at all, that may be even better, and certainly increases your customer sat scores as well. So we've seen major improvements at 20% or more across all of those metrics.
Wow, that's a large percentage in anyone's mind.
Yeah, well, remember, and this is something that's important to understand for anybody who's going to roll this out, is that doesn't just happen. You have to build this remote assistance into your support processes and your tech processes. And once you do that, and there's a lot of ways to do that, certainly making the technology easy to use is part of that, but changing your process is important as well. So the companies that focus on change management, and when I say change management, this isn't some 2-year, big 5 consulting deal, right? This is just making simple changes in your process. You already have the process down. You just need to infuse the superpower into your process, and you'll see the results.
Yeah, it's interesting because the very next question that I have is that how does someone know? How do they know that or a business know that they're ready to adopt this technology? And I think that leads in really well, because I talk to tomorrow, well, we've got to do this. And this stuff is scary. I mean, I'm not a techie per se, but we obviously in our line of business come across multiple, hundreds of different software applications and different bits of tech. This stuff is new. It's a little daunting. I'm still tapping my iPhone, trying to work out sometimes how it works. So how does a business know that they're ready? How talking about that process, if you ran into a business, where would you say, not just yet in terms of the process you have in place, or hey, you're ready to adopt?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we do. There's a process that we follow to determine, one, is a customer ready? Is somebody ready to roll it out? And then two, how hard is that going to be? How hard are we going to have to push in order to get them to be successful? So I think if you're resistant to change, right? And there's always going to be people, right? There's going to be people that may be resistant to change, but if the company's culture, the organizational culture is a bit resistant to change, then we typically won't get started. It doesn't make any sense. You need to have an innovative leader that will be responsible for this program, and it is a program, right? You can call it whatever you want. There's certainly remote assistance or virtual support or whatever you want to do, but you need to have that defined, and it needs to be somebody who's responsible for that and who has the chops to get it done. But the other thing is, sort of the not ready, as you mentioned, there's not really a compelling event in our market, right? I mean, there's no, many times when we are talking to prospects, there is no real compelling event. So it's really just about, well, listen, if you're going to impact your first time fix rate by 20%, or if you're going to save, $20,000 a month, and we have customers saving way more than that, then the compelling event is why not? Why not start saving that 20,000 a month in August as opposed to in December, right? So those are the kinds of questions we ask.
Yeah, I guess it is that urgency. We see it in everything, trying to have our clients adopt the new and latest technologies, but the right fit technology at the same time. Speaking with us in the room that have all got a little bit of grey, I'm only 23, but I've often wondered, like, you've got some really talented technicians, right? And seriously, to the older guys in the industry, I'm not being disrespectful at all, but because some of them probably know how to use an iPhone better than I do, type of thing. However, is there a reluctance from, and when I say older guys, I mean more experienced, and generally that comes with number of years. Is there a reluctance for them to adopt it? Like, what's the best way? Do I get my technician who's 50, who's got 20, 30 years experience, to learn how to use this first to help the younger guys and girls? Or is it a little bit in the middle where you've got that, seriously, I'm 40, I think, this year. So I got introduced to computers 6, 7, 8, I think it was, with the first one. So I'm in, I guess, that generation. Where do you start? Because I see a lot of fear around this. Do we give it to the kid, but then the kid hasn't got any experience? Or do we try and get the old guy to adopt it and run with it? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, there certainly is resistance, as I mentioned, and there's obstacles to adoption. There's a lot of kind of best practices that we have around that. I think one of the ones you mentioned, listen, if somebody's 50 or 60 and they probably don't necessarily want to be a road warrior anymore. So, but they're gold, right? They're gold to the company. So if you can say, listen, you can work from your home, or you can work from your home city and support, these new engineers that are going out. You've got all of this knowledge in your head. You've got all this experience. Let's use that, and work 3 days a week or whatever. And we've got a lot of our customers that are doing that with their more experienced technicians to allow them to continue to work, when their knees aren't as good as they used to be. And it's been pretty valuable. But listen, there's no secret, right? Change is hard. Adopting new technology can be scary. And many times, as I said, the ones that are most successful of our customers are the ones that have an innovative leader in place and puts the right incentives in place and requires people to change and use it. And quite frankly, with this type of solution, once you see success a couple of times, then success breeds success, and you start seeing many other people use it.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to add on that. One of the things, a moment ago, you were talking about how do we know when a company's ready? And I would say that in terms of financial justification and readiness to benefit from the technology, companies are ready. How are they ready to be successful at it, right? And I would say, and I don't want us to focus on the negative at all, but I think it's really important to avoid the failure, right? Because what Mark said is success breeds success. And we see that every time. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to take this great technology and plop it down on a call center or a support center where either people haven't embraced it or there's no champion, because you don't want to have to recover lost ground, whether it's with people's attitude or whatever. So I would say a really great sign that an organization is ready to jump into this is that they have a plan, or an individual or a small department that can embrace it enthusiastically and make it a success, because you need that champion, you need that people to arouse some interest, some envy, some aspirational goals. Like, I want to be like that department, I want to be like that division, or like, I want to be like that regional office. And I also would caution that while the age is a great indicator, it's really one that you have to be careful of, because you can have that guy, as Mark alluded to, who is, the older guy who's always signing up for the training. He's always asking for the new tool. He's not only showing the guys how to change a compressor, but he's also showing the guys how to use the warranty claim system. And if you can find that guy and get him up on Help Lightning, boy, that's gold. The other thing that, I don't want to put Mark on the spot to mention this, but you can have a support team that's 50 people, or you can have a support team scattered around the globe that's 1,000 people. You don't need to, if you want to do a big rollout, the company and the technology lends itself to that. But if you want to say, look, Dennis and Mark, let's take this team of 5 guys in the midst of 1,000 people. Let's make this team of 5 guys successful for 6 months. It really does lend itself to that, particularly because the technology lends itself to a person who has the technology supporting people who've never even heard of the technology, right? So sometimes when a call escalates to a certain level, then it reaches a guy who's employing every trick, he's employing every technique, and that's a great opportunity to show how remote support works.
I definitely agree with both of you there. I mean, it's one of the biggest things with, I guess, Origo selling our services is I need your team to understand the why. If your team aren't bought in, it's going to fail just as quickly as if we failed. So, no, 100% agree. Just a little to the side here. When we talk about Help Lightning helping technicians interact with the customer or supporting a technician, I know a lot of techs, love them. Some of my best friends are techs. I'm not sure that I'd let them talk to a customer, especially an angry 20-year-old that's got a fryer broken that's in charge. And how have you seen that work? Because I could quite quickly see a phone being thrown across the room trying to support a customer. I understand the tech to tech because you're on that same level. How have you guys seen that work?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's worked quite well, though that in that use case, the person supporting the customer is a customer support engineer, is a customer support technician. So that's what they do for a living, right? Now, maybe they used to try to support them over the phone, but now they've got this superpower of remote assistance with Help Lightning with virtual, with virtual assistants. And so it's those are the people that are supporting the customers. And so, and the fact that they now can see what the customer is seeing, and they can perhaps put a screwdriver into the customer's field of view and say, I need you to turn this just like this, typically is way better than trying to talk to somebody over the phones, and trying to guide them through a solution over the phone. So, and we haven't seen any real issues there. As a matter of fact, one of our non-food service customers, Becton Dickinson, which is a lab automation equipment company, they do customer support with Help Lightning so much now that their customers almost require it. Their customers will actually ask them, I want to use Help Lightning for this so that you can help me walk through this problem.
Okay, interesting. I guess the tech needs to have some sort of ability or experience in being that remote support already, or that customer service.
Sure.
Yeah, if he's going to upset him with Help Lightning, he's upsetting him anyways. So let's get on with the problem. It's not the technology.
It's probably a very good point.
It's funny, you said before about what Origo does, and that reminds me of an earlier part of this discussion when we said that the business, I forget how you said it, Scott, but I wanted to bring us back to it because you said you've got to understand the system, right? Sometimes you can't just throw the technology in there. You've got to understand the system. You've got to dive into the system. You can't just say people, tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to have to learn how this technology works. Instead, you say, tomorrow we're going to be able to improve the way we take care of our customers. And I know, because I've talked to you about your business model, it's not just a matter of applying the magic dust. You've really got to get in there and see how the system works, and then you can see how the technology fits in.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like Mark said, it's a rollout plan. It's making sure everyone understands the why. I often say to people, your productivity is going to go down. You can't introduce something new and expect that you're going to have the same amount of efficiencies you had yesterday when you weren't using it. Now, hopefully, with a well thought out plan and a proper roadmap, you'll understand what that looks like and where you're going to get uplift again from your point of view as an employee, or from the point of view of the managers, or ultimately the bosses. So no, I think it is. It's just understanding the why and having that time and that support to learn it. Some people love new technology. I don't. I've got to be honest. It's one of those things that just goes, but it was working okay. But then you've got to take that hat off of, okay, that's your personal opinion. What's best for the business? And we often do it even internally in our business. What's best? And you're going to have some downtime. Things are going to break. Things aren't going to be perfect. But as long as I think you have that support, like you say, Mark, from Help Lightning, which is hugely important. I think it's not talked about too much because everyone says, yes, we have good support. One of the biggest things I see from tech adoption is you get the fluffy brochure, you get sold really well, it sounds really fantastic, but and I often say it with our business, it's the little things that break our relationships with our clients. It's not the big things. Big things are easy to fix. It's the little niggly things. The tech week after week can't quite work out how this thing works on this piece of tech, or maybe the customer's not getting it and that frustration builds. Big things are easy to fix. So that's sort of my opinion, I guess, when it comes to rollout plans, is just making sure everyone understands you're going to have a different productivity. It's going to be painful, but hopefully if the software provider or the technology provider provides that support, after the fact, I think that's where you get huge gains and quick gains at the same time. We've kind of talked about everything that I wanted to talk about.
Let me throw out another one for you. We've talked
Sure.
about how a company, a manufacturer, or somebody else can support the user. We've also talked about how you can support a technician in the field. But there's also this area that kind of lives in between, which is understanding a situation, diagnosing a situation before you roll the truck out. And that's where we're seeing some really great opportunities. I'll give you my favorite example. If somebody calls because their combi oven in a really busy kitchen, their combi oven is dripping water on the floor. I have two options. I can send a technician out there at 100 miles an hour to determine that the door seal or the door gasket is blown, and then he can come back a week later with a door gasket. Or I can use Help Lightning, and in about 5 minutes with the customer, I can determine that the door gasket is blown, and I can send him out there one time with the door gasket. And the economics and the customer satisfaction and leveraging our limited pool of technicians, all those metrics go up. And it has to do with how we triage, diagnose, and dispatch calls. And that's a great application for technology like this.
Yeah, it's like we've conspired, but we haven't. That's one of our passion pieces, Dennis, is remote first service. So providing remote technicians to really triage, understand, and potentially fix remotely. But one of the benefits of that, and this wasn't supposed to be anything about us or me in this discussion today, but because you mentioned it, but one of the big things it does is instead of just getting a customer service call, and we often hear, oh, the customer service took the wrong part number because the customer didn't know the part number or didn't know what the actual problem was. You're getting a deeper triage before you're dispatching, and even if you have to dispatch. So our passion is, can we do remote first service and have technicians remotely fix, I'm going to say, a lot of these problems, because I don't have proper data right now to quote percentages. But it's looking really exciting. As you guys have alluded to or said straight out, the more this technology, the more these ovens have the diagnostic tools available in them for us to do this remotely, I think it's going to be a huge part of the way we service, especially in food equipment, in the coming years. So it's a very big passion piece of ours at Origo, Dennis. So thanks for bringing that one up.
It wasn't a setup. I was just passionate.
No, I know it wasn't. Not many people know that we're playing in that space. So no, it's a really good thing. I'm glad you have.
Well, I love how people are using Help Lightning to play with their business models. It's really great. It's a great process.
Absolutely. So and I guess following on from that, probably my last thing is what is an easy use case to get started with remote assistance? I'm sitting out there. Okay, cool. Sounds good, guys. Where do I start? How do I start? What would be some key indicators that could say, hey, I could adopt this technology?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we typically look for. And one is it's something that happens often. A lot of times somebody will come up with this great use case in their head and we'll say, okay, great. Well, how often? Well, that about once a quarter that we have that problem. Well, that's not a good use case, right? It needs to be something that happens pretty regularly, or something that's frequent enough for you to use the tool, get familiar with it, and see that the value is going to be added. There was a time when we thought internal use cases were the best to start with, like an internal level 3 or something, working with a field service engineer internally. But as the tool has become really much easier to work with and very user friendly, we see a lot of people starting with customer use cases and they do great, right? So I don't think it's really about should it be working with a customer or working with an internal. It's really something that happens frequently enough for you to really test the tool and the process and make sure you're doing that right. And that's really the main thing.
Yeah, and I would add another great use case which lends itself to adoption is in our industry, and I don't know, Mark, if this applies to some of the other industries that you work in, but in our industry, there are many occasions where you have equipment rollout, right? Like I talked to a company, a couple of months ago, and they were rolling out a new piece of equipment to 9,000 McDonald's. And by definition, what you have is and it was brand new piece of equipment. You have 9,000 restaurants staffed by people who've never seen this piece of equipment. And by definition, every technician that rolls out is going to be dealing with a new situation that they haven't been trained on. Or maybe they have been trained on, but there's no reason to be embarrassed. It's new. Nobody's seen this thing. And in my experience, you always have a small dedicated group of people that are on call to make that rollout successful. So you can have you're educating 9,000 store managers and a number of technicians on what are we going to do, because we know we will have a glitch when we roll this out. How are we going to handle it? Perfect case to put Help Lightning in the hands of those 6 people who are on call and advise the other people that this time when you get a glitch with that new thing, we're going to support you in a different and better way.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a really interesting concept. I mean, that's a huge rollout, although maybe not with some of the franchisees.
If you're rolling it out to 50 restaurants too, you know.
Yeah, 100%. No, I do like that. And I think back to what Mark said as well, that frequency, don't try and adopt it and then use it once a month. And that comes back to what we were saying, I guess, in the guts of what we were talking about today is have an implementation plan, know where and how, and a proper rollout plan so you feel comfortable with that frequency of use as well. Really great to chat today, guys. Very excited about Help Lightning. I think it's a fantastic product. I love it, and I think it's only going to be part of our everyday future. How can people find out more about remote assistance and Help Lightning?
Yeah. Well, in our industry, you know, I'm definitely here to help. Within the food service equipment industry, I'd be glad to engage with anybody, not just to, you know, pursue a sale, but I love talking about this stuff with the industry. It's DennisonCleveland@gmail.com, or you can, you know, find me on LinkedIn. And we're certainly comfortable passing opportunities and discussions back and forth between Kitchen Equipment and Mark's company. Mark, from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go out to the website, helplightning.com. There's plenty of information out there. There's, you know, you can download a lot of information, or you can request a demo right there. We'll be happy to help you out.
Wonderful, gentlemen. I think it's something that everyone, especially if you're watching today, have a look at it. At least watch the videos. I mean, they're pretty cool. But I think dive in, have a look at this. And when I say dive in, a measured approach, I probably can't repeat that enough today. It is fantastic, but it needs commitment from the business and a buy-in and everyone to understand the why. But I really think that this is an exciting journey that we're going to undertake over the next few years as our industry changes immensely. Mark, Dennis, thank you very much for joining me today. Really insightful, and I hope we can talk again. I'd love to run through a use case with a live client with you and demonstrate that to the audience as well.
Great job.
Thanks, guys. That's good. That's the first one of these I've done since about, I don't know, February or March or something. I think we can pull some great things in there to make some good articles that I'll pass by you guys. And I'm just, as you're wrapping up there, I'm just thinking it would be cool to get some clients on to talk about their experience with Help Lightning. The more we're pushing this remote first service and techs out of, like, we've just employed another 3, I think, technicians out of the Philippines.
Great.
I really see it being, you know, sometimes I struggle struggle supporting dispatching, customer services and billing because everyone wants to employ onshore, but there is just such a vacuum of technicians at the moment, and it's only going to get worse over the next 10 years.
Just let us know what we can do. But if there's anything you need to add to this or whatever, just let me know.
Okay, guys, I'm going to jump. Oh, sorry.
I've taken too much of your time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I very much, really do appreciate your time.